Hi guys, Literary Prepper back with you again. So this video is a part of a series that I want to do on the diary of Anne Frank. Now, if you haven't read this book before, or if you don't own it, then go out and buy it. As I've said before, buy books. One of your greatest sort of prepping assets. Think about, if we are in a grid down sort of situation, or if you need to bug out somewhere, or if for whatever reason you don't have access to phone, laptop, the usual electronic, TV, all those sorts of bits and pieces that usually keep us entertained, you're going to need things like cards, dominoes, books, board games, all the sorts of entertainment options that our grandparents and great-grandparents were sort of brought up on. I remember when I was little, every time we went around to my grandparents' place, bring out the dominoes or a deck of cards or something, and the TV at their place pretty much was only ever used to view sports. So whenever we went there, it was, you're either playing outside or you're playing at the kitchen table with, some kind of family type game. And I really do think that we should bring those back for a number of reasons, but you're definitely going to need some sort of entertainment if we are in a situation where you don't have access to any of your normal electronic bits and pieces. But back to Anne Frank. So if you haven't read the book, spoiler alert, I am going to go into bits and pieces. So if you haven't read it, go read it and then come back. Or if you don't mind some spoilers, then hang around and read the book afterwards. So for this particular sort of study on it, it sort of ties into something that happened to us last night. My husband and I took our little boy for a walk just around the neighbourhood, trying to sort of make sure we get some sort of exercise in whenever we can. I'm still recovering from some medical issues that sort of prevented me from doing anything, so slowly trying to build my fitness back up. But while we're walking around different sort of streets or whatever, there was one house in particular that we came to that caught my attention, and I kind of felt like knocking on these people's doors to actually sort of say, but you don't want to embarrass people. You could actually hear this person in the shower, and it looked like all of their doors and windows were closed, but you could hear what they were doing in the shower. So I mean, as well as, the water running and, all that sort of stuff. So things to sort of keep in mind is that just because people can't see you, or just because you can't see people, doesn't mean they can't hear you. How that ties in with Anne Frank. So obviously a lot of you out there would have read the book. So if you sort of remember when they're talking about life in the annex, they had to watch the times that they flushed the toilets. There were times where they, had to keep conversation to an absolute minimum or not talk at all. They had to be really, really careful, because if anyone heard them, they could have been reported. And obviously someone did in the end, but there's a book that a British woman released. I think she wrote it in 2003. It's like a biography of Otto Frank, and she has a couple of decent theories about who actually betrayed the Franks. But that's, sort of her book, so sort of Google that one. I'm not quite sure what it's called. I think her first name is Carolyn, if that helps. But these guys had to be super, super quiet, because basically they were sort of bugging in, if for lack of a better term, that's pretty much what they were doing. So if that's your plan, or your sort of primary plan in a shit hits the fan, end of the world sort of scenario, then that's something that you guys are also going to have to consider is noise levels. So for our house, for instance, we have a good portion of the house is tile, and the person who built it, we didn't build it, they were very much into having like an open dining room, lounge room, kitchen area, which is all tile, and all very square, hard surfaces. So if you guys don't know anything about how sound works, basically, if you think about it like a particle, so it bounces all around the place. Excuse me. So if you think about the walls of your house being like, little people playing ping pong, the sound is going to sort of move between. And if you have two frequencies that are exactly the same, that are sort of traveling along the same wavelength, or opposing wavelengths that sort of wind up bouncing along at the same time as each other, they will double the sound from like coming out of your area. The converse of that is that if you have two of the opposite frequencies, they'll cancel each other out, but that's a little bit too complex for what we're doing, and you can't really sort of gauge your speech so that you eliminate the sound coming out of your mouth. That's way beyond all of our pay grades. But what you can do, if you do have a house that is full of hard square surfaces, if you have a lot of glass, if you have a lot of tile, if your house is very square, even if you have hardwood floors, make sure that when you're looking at, if you are planning on bugging in, even if it's only for a short period of time, you need to have something that is going to squash that sound. So you can do what these guys did and just not make noise and just sit still and read for the entire day. But there are going to be times when it is necessary to make noise, or you accidentally drop something, or there's a hinge on a door that creaks or something like that. So you can do your absolute very best to keep quiet, but it's not always possible. So what do you do? Well, first of all, you can, if you are sort of building or thinking about renovating, then consider carpeting your floors, but that's only one small portion of the problem. You can do things like get really heavy drapes or curtains, which are so not in fashion at the moment, but if fashion were an issue, then most of us wouldn't be filling our pantries and wardrobes with all sorts of canned goodies and dried beans and water containers and things that make us look like we're crazy. So get heavy curtains, and it's better anyway. It's more energy efficient. If you get blackout curtains, it means that you don't have to worry about being woken up at sunrise or by those pesky street lights or cars driving past or whatever. Our bedroom's at the front of our house, so that happens. So that's an option. The other thing that you guys can do is choose a particular room in your house that is going to be like your main living area. So if you have a large room or a bedroom or some kind of space that can adequately accommodate your little party sort of thing, family, community, whoever you have prepping with you, get them into the same room. And what you want to do is on your walls, you don't want a plain wall like this, because that's one big hard surface that is very easy for sound to reflect off. But if you have things like, if you're one of these people who keeps the boxes that things come in, particularly electronics and things like that, where you have foam as like the protective padding around stuff, or if you keep cereal boxes, tissue boxes, the rolls from your toilet paper or paper towel or whatever, keep all of those. and you want to get some sort of duct tape, or if you have glue, you want to stockpile some kind of adhesive, and you want to turn this into the ugliest, most uneven collage that you possibly can. And you want to do the same on all of the flat walls and the ceiling if possible. So if you have a whole heap of, take books for example, if you have a book that you bought and read that you really don't like, I'm not for destroying books, but in a survival situation I do realize there are things that you need to do. But if you have a book that you really don't like, then you can start tearing out the pages, screwing them up and taping them on the wall in different areas. If you have two surfaces that are really uneven, then the sound can't bounce. It will become absorbed, and the softer that material is, so something like soft fabrics or foam rubber or something like that, really good for absorbing sound and whatnot. So that's one road that you can sort of go down to try to limit that. Or if you want to bring back popcorn ceilings, then that's something that you can sort of do now. If you want to get a little bit more funky, then you can put curtains on your walls, or you can carpet your walls. I've always liked that idea, but I haven't been able to convince anyone else that it's a good idea yet. That's one of my future plans, is to actually sort of try to convince my husband that carpeting the walls is a good thing. We haven't spoken about that, but it did not go down well with my parents when I brought it up. So the other thing that you can do, depending on your budget, is buy acoustic paint. Now, if you guys haven't heard of this stuff, it's basically like a wall paint, like a normal wall paint that you can buy, but it is specifically designed, like it's got little particles and bits and pieces in it, specifically designed to absorb sound. Now, I haven't been able to find this stuff in shops. You have to order it online, and you do need quite a lot of it. So that's why I say pick a room, because doing your entire house in acoustic paint is going to be very expensive. Like 1 tin of paint, which depending on the absorbency of your walls, you probably need a tin per wall sort of thing to give really thick layers of this stuff. It's $250 from the last place that I looked at. So it's not something that you want to do half-heartedly. It's expensive. But if you have the budget and it's something that you want to do, it means that your house is still going to look relatively normal if you want to start soundproofing your house now, rather than trying to do like excess construction work or whatever down the road. Then it's something that you can look into, is acoustic paint. The other thing that you can do if you want something that still looks normal, that's not really going to draw attention to you now, is you can buy acoustic panels, and they look like you've got modern art on the walls or on the ceiling. You've probably seen them at some cafes and restaurants. So that's another option. If you want to go back to something that is really easy to stockpile, so that you can just glue things up wherever, egg cartons are really easy to sort of just stack them all up on top of each other. And you could probably, this is not something that I actually have in my preps at the moment. We don't plan on being in this house for very much longer, so all of my planning for soundproofing is sort of for a house that we're going to be in the future. But if something were to happen tomorrow, I have enough stuff around me that I can make something on the spot. But egg cartons, I mean, I've had to store them for art projects, and you can get like 20 of them in a really tiny sort of space that just slots in easily. And if you've got space for all sorts of other stuff, then you've got space for a few dozen egg cartons. So that's the other thing that you can do if you don't want to sort of be fiddling around with smaller bits and pieces. Or again, if you want something that looks a little bit more deliberate, that is going to look more like modern art rather than looking like you've just got random rubbish stuck to your walls. If you guys have ever seen the roofing in some music studios or sound studios, they get basically sort of little, you know, pieces of wood, like your 2x4s or whatever, 4x4s, and just cut them at different lengths, and sort of obviously tidy up the edges so that you don't have little splintery bits poking out all over the place. But they stick those all over the ceiling at different points so that it's, you know, a very, very uneven surface. Once again, buy lots of rugs. Rugs roll up, store them in your garage. Just looks like you have rugs that you're not using. Extra blankets, extra sheets, all sorts of things like that. So yeah, that's another thing that you can sort of pick up from, you know, Anne Frank and her family in the annex is, you know, the fact that if you are bugging in, then you probably will at some stage need to be very quiet and try not to bring attention to yourself, which if you have kids is going to be a lot harder, and soundproofing is going to be a lot more involved and a lot more important. And of course, first and foremost, make sure that your walls are insulated, because it doesn't matter how much stuff you put on the outside of that gyprock if you don't have insulation in the walls. And I would recommend wool insulation because it's, you know, naturally fire retardant and it's more natural. Then, you know, start there. It can be expensive if you have to retrofit a place for, you know, insulation, but you'll save yourself money in electricity and, you know, gas if you have to sort of heat the place and cool the place. But it will add to soundproofing and cut down on noise from outside, but also stop noise from inside leaving the house and giving away your position if you're trying to make it look like your house has been abandoned. So that's all for now. If you're interested in seeing the other videos that I'm going to do in this series, or if you just don't want to miss out on any of our future content, feel free to like, share, subscribe. If you've got any comments, questions, you just want to say hi, then, you know, pop them in the comment box below. And you can also email me at theliteraryprepper@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter. So yeah, Diary of Anne Frank, definitely worthwhile getting a hold of and having a read. And yeah, make sure that your bug in or bug out location is soundproofed, because, you know, you need to sort of stay down low and keep your family safe. And that's all for now. I'll talk to you guys later.